GM everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond PFPs, brought to you by OSPN, the Open Source People's Network. This podcast is in partnership with the Rari Foundation, the DAO behind the Rarible protocol, and the Rari chain. The Rari chain, which recently launched, introduces a platform with embedded royalties, low transaction fees, and high transaction speed. It's designed to support creators and developers in the NFT space, ensuring fair compensation and broadening the potential for NFT applications. Now, Beyond PFPs is a podcast that is all about exploring the depth of NFTs beyond digital collectibles, highlighting their impact within various industries. Today, we're discussing how NFTs will impact governance, not just DAO governance, but within political campaigns and elections as well. Today, we're here with Frisson, the head of marketing for Tally, the primary platform for on-chain voting used by many of the top DAOs in the space. We have Joshua Leavitt with us as well, who is currently running for Nevada State Senate. And we also have Sean Gonzalez of the SuiteView Political Action Committee and focuses on Web3 solutions within the political arena and creating attestations for people that donate to noble causes in Web3. Glad to have you guys on for an episode of Beyond PFPs. Been looking forward to this conversation for a while now.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys. Now, the first question that I have here is for Frisson. So, Frisson, how did you get involved with Tally, and why is it important for DAOs to vote on chain? How can on-chain governance improve the DAO space?
Yeah, I got involved with Tally because I was working full time in the Web2 space, doing growth marketing, and wanted to make the jump to Web3 full time. And Tally had a great governance blog about just DAO governance and kind of what was happening in the space. And I really enjoyed that and thought that was kind of interesting space for me to contribute to, within crypto, and ended up making the jump to join Tally full time. What we really focus on at Tally is on-chain governance specifically. So the way that Tally works is if you create a proposal on Tally, the proposal itself contains a transaction that will be executed or can be executed if the proposal passes. So, for example, if you have a treasury, let's say Arbitrum, which is a big user of Tally, the Arbitrum treasury, if you want to fund a working group or fund some incentives from the Arbitrum treasury, you create a proposal on Tally, and the proposal actually contains a transfer from the DAO treasury to, wherever, let's say in OSSA that the working group owns. And then if the proposal passes, anyone can execute that permissionlessly. And so it really allows any arbitrary group of people to come together to control resources that are on chain in some way. And I think that's really exciting and empowering, and kind of increases the surface area for contribution to anyone from around the world. So yeah, that's why I'm so excited about Tally and on-chain governance in particular.
Yeah, man. We use Tally as well at Rari Foundation. Had my first experience with it through this proposal to get Beyond PFPs started. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also a way to automate governance in some way, like when it comes to the disbursement of funds as well.
Yeah. Sorry, did you say automate the disbursement of funds?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is you don't have to trust anyone to manually execute, let's say, a transfer, right? So if you want to move the funds from the DAO treasury to another place to pay a service provider or fund a working group, if you were to use an off-chain voting system, people vote on whether to do that. If they vote, to do it, then there's some other group, usually a multi-sig, that has to actually go ahead and compose a transaction and send it. Whereas in Tally, the proposal and the transaction are the same thing. So if it passes, anyone can just press a button on Tally and it will execute the transaction. So there's no trust layer needed between the governance and the execution of the governance.
Yeah, and I love tools that allow for automation and that are also trustless. So, and then that process allows for DAO governance to run faster as well, because we all know it could take a long time sometimes to get multi-sig signers to sign off on transactions. So I love how the actual proposal and a transaction is all bundled together within that same contract.
Yeah, exactly. It really an important part is that on-chain governance and Tally they scale to much larger groups. So if you have the Uniswap DAO, let's say, which has 30,000 people who can vote in it, you really can't do that via multi-sig, right? Whereas Tally kind of allows an arbitrary number of people to give input to and then ultimately execute any kind of governance decision.
And then all that data is on chain on a database that's immutable, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, once a transaction's executed, you're just whatever blockchain it's on. Tally supports tons of chains. It's permanent on that blockchain.
Mm-hmm. All right, and now want to hear from Joshua. I would like to know, Joshua, why did you decide to get involved in politics, and what made you want to run for Nevada State Senate, and when did you begin to embrace Web3?
No, I appreciate the question. I'm glad to be here. So it wasn't until recently I get involved, in politics, and really because I saw a need for it. Who am I, right? I always think I'm just a guy here in Vegas, big on workforce development, big on promoting the tech and startup scene, building ecosystems, and so on. But something I've been doing for the past 6 years is talking to legislators and giving them a Nevada perspective on business and technology. So basically, I'd read the bills or the draft bills and reach out to the legislators and say, hey, why don't you tweak it this way, or maybe adjust it a little bit here because this doesn't make sense in the context, or just give my opinion. So I wasn't a lobbyist or anything like that, just somebody in the community that wanted to help out. And I always liked that role, right? I was a big fan of Benjamin Franklin. I always liked that he was never was the president, but he had a lot of influence over a lot of things. But last legislative session, I got real disappointed in some of the bills that just didn't get heard or didn't even get passed. Some of them were some bad bills, which I'm glad on, but some of them really were needed here in Nevada to promote more entrepreneurism and so on. And so I realized, all right, you can only do so much as a person calling up and giving your thoughts or even testifying, because by that time I imagine the legislators already have their mind set up. So why don't I go ahead and start looking at doing it at a peer level? And I happen to be pretty good friends with the current state senator at the time. I was on his workforce committee. He was terming out, and I said, "Hey, Scott is his name." I said, "I'm considering running for your position." He said, "Josh, if you do it, you're the only person I'd endorse." So that gave me some pretty good motivation to go for it. And I've been pushing hard pretty since. But ideally, man, I'm there to give represent entrepreneurism, technology, and be able to speak to those legislators at a peer level, teach them what needs to be done to fix and make Nevada better in those spaces, and move things forward.
Yeah, really respect the fact that you support entrepreneurs as well. And Web3 is definitely the right space to connect with entrepreneurs, because we all that's how we survive within Web3, in this space, especially like within the DAO space. A lot of serial entrepreneurs here. So happy to see that you're getting more involved within the space. And like, how did you get involved in crypto in the first place?
So one of the things I do here is I run an event called Tech Alley. And what it does is it brings the tech and startup community together to share knowledge. So think of it almost like a festival or even a conference. So every month I say, I get venue spaces, and then I invite people in the community that are willing to share knowledge to take those spaces. That way the community can go to one spot and they don't have to travel around the city. They can go to one spot at one day to engage the scene, right? And one of the meetups that were there was on blockchain, and I think he's actually in the audience. James was hosting his meetups there, and I look at it as a technologist myself, and thought, all right, this is pretty neat technology. I think I kind of grasp how it works, and I think it'd be really neat if the rest of the community explores it as well. So things we would do as a way to get people involved is some of the artwork that we would create. We'd make it an NFT, and it was worthless, but we would then give it out to the speakers that would speak. So we'd promote their event, and then we'd give them, an NFT, would mint an NFT, give it to them as a way to say, hey, now you have a wallet. Why don't you learn how to, use it? Type of a thing. And that actually got picked up by a group called Women in Technology, or National Center for Women in Technology, and they heard what we were doing, and they ended up making their trophies, minting those as NFTs and giving them to the girls, 130 of them. And they got a wallet and instructions on how to access it and stuff like that. So that ideally, again, they can start exploring that space, and to see, what they can make. Because I sort of looked at it as that way. It's this Wild West. This is Internet 1.0 again, man. If we ever had a chance to go back to Internet 1.0 and go, all right, now instead of just making little websites on GeoCities, we're actually able to make money off of it. That would be cool to explore. So I was eager to see Nevada and Las Vegas folks participate into it. Then we ended up going to Reno, and that's where I met Sean as well, and he got to talking about DAOs, and that was really interesting to me as well. And we were looking at DAOs and POAPs as ways to entice and reward folks for participating in things like this. So it was just it just opened my eyes in a lot of ways to the possibilities of what blockchain can do as a ledger, what DAOs can do as a way for people to get involved and have a say. POAPs can do to authenticate or to say, hey, yeah, I went to an event and maybe we can use those. And this is something Sean and I used to talk about. Use those as a way to use entrepreneur currency, so I can go to places and say, hey, I was somewhere. Here's my actual proof that I was there, and now I can get a discount to something like that. So again, I just thought the technology was neat, and I always enjoy hearing, what people's take on, technology and how they can make money on it or make the world a better place with it too. So it was just really cool to hang out with those folks. You might ask, hey, why does that have to do with me and running for state politics? And I'll tell you this: some of the bills that didn't get through were around blockchain. One was around educating, and the other one was dealing with a fintech sandbox program, and they never even got heard, right? And that was one of those things I realized legislators don't even know what blockchain is. They think of it as NFTs and meme coins and so on. There was one legislation that was trying to basically fine people as a way to compensate if they got gypped or they lost money or something like that. And thankfully that one didn't even get heard. But it just showed me there's not an understanding of this. So my thought process was, now that I'm running, why don't I take crypto as a donation piece? That way, one, it's a great way to get money for the campaign. But two, if legislators and people in the campaign want to start learning the technology and they want to, I should say it this way, if they want to start accepting crypto for donations, then they're going to be forced to learn the technology. And people in the Web3 space will have a little bit more influence and comfortability talking to legislators. So I went up to the state and said, hey, I want to do this. And they said, sorry, that's not possible. We're not going to allow it. But all it took was a couple hours of working it out, saying, hey, it does fit within our campaign finance laws. We're using Coinbase, and here's this know your customer process that goes through it. They changed their mind. So as of September of last year, Nevada now accepts cryptocurrency for campaign donations, all because we had the ability to just explain it in common sense language that didn't make them afraid of it. So things are moving forward, and this is exactly what I'm hoping to see.
Oh man, I think it's really refreshing to see legislators embrace Web3. So big shout outs to you for doing so. And I think it's really cool that you got other organizations to utilize NFTs and POAPs as well. That was really cool how you was able to inspire that other group to do so.
Yeah, I don't know if I inspired it, but we definitely have conversations around it, and talking to folks. I think I was more inspired than anything around it, and I'm eager to incorporate it as ways to get more people involved in it.
Awesome. Well, I got some other questions lined up that's geared towards use cases for NFTs within a political campaign. So looking forward to jumping into that in a second.
Are you interested in building NFTs that'll disrupt traditional industries? You can get started by using Rarible protocol. It's an open source cross-chain NFT protocol that's community governed. You can check out the code on GitHub and then request an API key at Rarible.org. No matter what NFT project you intend on building, Rarible Protocol equips you with the necessary tools to turn your ideas into reality. If you like the fact that the Rarible Protocol is community governed, consider joining the Rari Foundation, which is the DAO behind the protocol. Joining the Rari Foundation offers you the opportunity to help shape the future of NFT infrastructure. If you're looking to engage in governance and vote on key decisions, you can become a delegate by joining community calls and participating on forum, which will boost your reputation and help you earn some voting power through our delegate incentive program. If you'd like to learn more about the community, visit rari.foundation and then join the Discord server and begin joining our calls and making connections with the community. A community that is all about supporting creators. The Rari Foundation demonstrated how much they support NFT creators by creating the Rari chain to make sure that royalties are embedded at the node level, ensuring that creators always receive royalties from secondary sales. By building on Rari Chain, you're safeguarded by a system that respects and protects creator earnings. Learn more about Rari Chain at rarichain.org. With Rari, you're joining a movement focused on decentralized governance, innovation, and creator empowerment. Now, back to the episode.
Now, my next question here is for Sean. So, Sean, when did you get involved with the SuiteViewPAC, and how can political action committees leverage blockchain and NFTs to support their causes?
Yes, about a year and a half ago, I realized that doing some statistical calculations on chain was going to be challenging to launch as a product, especially back then the recession was just hitting. I started looking for other loves, and I found Lobby 3. And Lobby 3 has since divested into Open Civics, but there's been a lot of great work that was done there and a lot of great connections that were done there. And one of them is working with SuiteView. One of them is finding out that a friend of mine, Josh, is running for state senate, and I was like, oh, look at that. Look how that worked out. And, the entire time there's been this question of how can this technology be used for open civics, for decentralized civics, for decentralized science, for reputation, for DAOs. How can you actually structure the DAO, right? So Frisson, you mentioned that the vote can then directly go into a transaction. And one of the first things I thought of was we didn't call it the association agreement for Lobby 3 that explicitly had the directors just sort of double check, because sometimes somebody may forget to do something, or there's erroneous vote, or somehow there's something you didn't think about, and you don't want people just draining the account. And I mean, these are all really, really contextual, and it's an awesome tool for sure. It just gets complicated as you go down the rabbit hole and get into the details. You look like you want to say something. Let me give you a chance.
No, absolutely. The on-chain governance is super powerful, right? But anything that's trustless and permissionless and decentralized is also scary. If you put a proposal on chain, it's on chain and you can't take it back, right? So totally agree on that. A lot of the clients we work with, they have, built up systems almost like checks and balances. You could think of it that way, where they're almost different like governance bodies, and they might have one that's sort of responsible for vetoing proposals kind of for this use case as well. Like Arbitrum has a security council. It's a separate governance body that is like a 9 or 12 multi-sig that is elected by the token holders, but has the ability to sort of categorically veto any proposal that is deemed unsafe or unconstitutional in the DAO. Exactly. Totally hear you on that.
Yeah, and it's just it's interesting to highlight where our lives kind of overlapped at one point. I put that into an association agreement. They put it in the structure you just mentioned, you keep going with this stuff, right? And there's limitations to what the DAOs are really capable of, because there's this idea of direct democracy, but you're trying to get everybody to vote on stuff just doesn't happen. So how should you structure it, right? And we started looking into that for a campaign last year for a friend of mine that was considering a Senate run in New York. And as you dig into those realities, the FEC considers crypto, it doesn't really, at best, it's a cash payment. And it requires all campaigns to convert to fiat right away, right? So if you have any schemes in the DAO where somebody, you have a campaign DAO and they give crypto, and then you want to do something like with Tally where the funds are automatically allocated for an event perhaps that people are throwing, whether it's a pizza party at home or, a gala downtown, maybe you just want to make sure they have that money. Current laws don't allow for that to be managed that way, right? And so that's one of these education things that's going to take a little bit of time. And it's fascinating listening to Josh because, we can focus on the fact that these laws are, maturing, or whatever polite term you want to put in there. But it's wonderful to hear Josh being able to just talk with the Secretary of State for, not too long, and change an entire state's approach to campaigns. And that's wonderful. And I like focusing on that really positive. And it's the reason why I'm happy that, the tech that me and in a way I represent kind of a network of developers that are just interested in this stuff and want to put their time into this. They want to do these types of applications that, automatically allocate money based on reputation, based on awards that were given. Like we were just having a discussion about, if you give an NFT and that NFT gets sold on an open dairy market, where does that fall? Did you give anything to that person? Is that considered like a gift card? Well, it's not exactly, right? Gift cards, the transaction is already happening. In this case, the best analogy I could come up with was, Michael Jordan's game shoes. Nobody wants my game shoes. I'm not very good. I got a decent 3-point shot and I can post up, a little bit, but Jordan is not responsible for the price of his shoes in a pawn shop. And should the campaign be responsible for what an NFT sells for because there's a bunch of people who love Josh? I know there's no laws for these sorts of things yet. At least I don't think so. So, we're focusing right now on quadratic funding for a series of candidates who may be part of the same race or may just be interested in a topic. And it's a fun ride so far.
Yeah, man. What you brought up about somebody not necessarily being interested in purchasing your gym shoes, it just made me think of another question that I have lined up here that was going to be around like creating merch for a political campaign that could be like a metaverse wearable, like within Decentraland or the Sandbox or Avagachi, for an example. I would see that going over well if the politician was popular, like if Trump launched some metaverse wearables. I think that would go over well. I'm gonna save that part for a little bit later, but about to jump in. I want to see Frisson's take on this question. Where Frisson, I'd like to know, like, what role do you see Tally playing for political elections in the future? Will people be able to vote from home to eliminate traditional vote from home challenges such as paper ballots? And how can we ensure one vote, one person, one person, one vote?
Yeah, I'll start by saying I think we're a ways away from something like Tally, being used in like a government or like a nation state election. And in general, not just Tally, but I think our other guests would be more expert than me on this, but I think a lot of nation states are not necessarily super close to having like fully digital voting just yet. And that's because one of the reasons that is there's just a lot of challenges that remain to ensure that elections can be conducted, in a fair and provably fair manner. Now, as with a lot of things, like, we're starting to see the technological and social pieces start to come together for that. And, when the time is right, it can probably happen faster than any of us expect. But I don't think, like, for example, Tally is sort of like going to be imminently used by like a nation state or like a state government or anything in the near future. But yeah, I think that's something we would love to explore. I think there's probably some ways, like the sort of standard implementation of Tally today, right, is not set up for kind of, like what we would think of as like a government election. Like, for example, on Tally, like the basic architecture is one token, one vote. And a lot of our clients use that, in the sense of like a token is like a unit of, a utility token in the network rather than a person. But, this is not like it doesn't have to be this way, right, with the technology. Something that got a lot of traction last year was like this idea of soul-bound tokens, or non-transferable tokens is maybe a less scary sounding name for this. Vitalik wrote a lot about this, and you could easily use a non-transferable token on Tally. So you would have some sort of like registration or KYC system like Coinbase that's already been discussed, or maybe something more robust, or just like government that's like integrated into a government agency system. And then you would sort of issue a non-transferable token to, a person who's had like registered and done sufficient KYC to sort of be to prove that they are eligible to participate in the election. And then you can sort of distribute those non-transferable tokens to, however many people did that. And then in doing so, like hold an election on Tally that is representative of whatever like district or election surface area is being decided. So like theoretically, the ability to do it is actually already there today. I think it just takes time to really, get comfortable and make sure the technology is like sort of sufficiently robust for this system that is already like in place and works pretty well of off-chain elections, and also is like extremely important, right? Like you can't sort of like experiment casually, right, with an election of a government. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, I see. You don't necessarily want to experiment with a government election here. And it's nice to know that the technology for this already exists. We just have to test it out, really, and just maybe start on a smaller scale, and just work towards getting legislators to adopt it, using it that way. And then you brought up KYC. Obviously, there's going to have to be some sort of KYC process, but I was wondering like how ZK tech could fit in this, because I really want to focus on data ownership when it comes to like actually sharing private information when it comes to KYC and verifying yourself. You don't necessarily want that information that's on your driver's license, for an example, on a MySQL database, even though it is already like on a ton of databases anyway, like through processes where we had to go through KYC. But it doesn't always have to be that way. I just wonder, like, where does ZK Tech fit in this? Is there a way to actually just verify who you are between you and the contract, like create a trustless system for verifying yourself, so you don't have to have your data sitting on a MySQL database that could be manipulated by hackers or just slip into the wrong hands? Sean, do you have anything to add around how ZK could be utilized?
Yeah, actually, that's a perfect lead-in, because Frisson was talking about an ability to recognize whether or not a person voting was eligible in that particular election, whatever it may be, whether maybe it's a local election, it's a statewide election. We're using Holonet, and happy to make an introduction. Great group of guys. They have this new wallet called Silk. Allows you to create one wallet on the fly using your email address. It's really silky smooth, works real well. they use a ZKID, right? So you have a service that uses artificial intelligence to read your government issued ID front and back. That then gets encrypted, and the original information gets destroyed. And then they get a token in their wallet, and so that wallet can be validated to vote using that system. And yeah.
And then could you like revoke some certain data after a certain amount of time? Because like, what if they only need your information for for the election itself, but they don't have to always have it, right? Like, could you revoke it at a certain point?
Yeah,
Or like,
so you're using your private key, and you could go in and you could revoke access to that information. So anybody who wants to check that token for whatever the fields were that were saved, they wouldn't be able to get to it anymore, decrypted. So yeah, it's controllable by the individual, and it verifies their identity, verifies their voting area. Yeah, but these things are all really new.
right.
It's and there's we're not that they're not the only solution out there. There's a couple different ways to do this. There was some talk about Coinbase. That is one way to do it. There's some controversy around that because Coinbase is getting so large, and while we love what they're doing with the SEC, we kind of don't want the same thing that happened to Web3 that happened to Web2 with the aggregation around just a couple of large companies, 5 or so, kind of govern things these days.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'd like to jump in real quick and say that this is stuff that excites me. Well, first of all, I'd say when it comes to voting and adoption and so on, I think that our youth are getting very comfortable with this type of thinking and these types of processes and and so on. I think they're going to be good adopters, especially when they get old enough to really start influencing policy. But here in Nevada, we have a big issue when it comes to requiring a driver's license to vote. In fact, I think it's a really big debate here. I think everywhere you go, there's somebody asking you to sign a form that says, "Hey, I'm for or against it." I even have it on my campaign site, right? I'm for, having a driver's license or a way to prove who you are when it comes to voting. But something like this could solve an issue with the state. And I look at a couple things and I say, I don't necessarily want the state itself to go and say, all right, here's where we're going to implement blockchain here or this application here, or we're going to use it here. But I think we can open up the floodgates for opportunity for people to develop this type of stuff. You talk about giving your information away, or at least bits of it to a party for a certain amount of time and then revoking it a lot. There's a lot of legislation. I think you look at California, even Nevada, all over Europe, where it says there's all this protectionism on who gets your ID and how much you can have or your data and so on and so forth. I know there's for the past couple legislative sessions here, that's been a big piece of the discussion. But yeah, if you look at it, why not? If somebody could say, here is my information, and I'm going to give it to you, let's say a casino, and you create an environment based off of the information I'm going to give you. And once our relationship is over, I'm going back home, I want my information back. Then the state no longer has to regulate and create laws and spend a ton of money on enforcement of these. It sounds like it would really solve a big need for the state not getting involved in stuff like this. Again, from the state level, I don't think they have that can have all the ideas and here we want to do it, but we should at least start making laws that says, all right, don't prevent ideas like this from occurring, because this might be something that solves a need for a lot of us. Again, potentially voting, potentially the collection of data, who knows what. But I know we're spending a tremendous amount of money and time at least trying to enforce and argue these points.
Yeah.
I think you might be, if you don't mind me jumping in, I really love that topic. And in a way, I kind of want to frame it as we're describing old solutions and new solutions, and it's a little curious what type of political effect it's going to have, meaning like, who's going to be affected by it? What does their industry currently look like? What might they be willing to do in order to hold on to market share, right? Because what's also illegal is robocalls, right? Spam calls. if you're not have that do not call registry. But I get them multiple times a day, right? And they make it so difficult to track them that even though it's illegal, it's effectively legal. And there are some places that will help you try to automate it, but nobody's keeping up with it, right? And that's the model, some would say, on purpose of the old system. Is that, oh, but hey, look, it's illegal. It's like, yeah, but you don't have enough enforcement. And then they have some lobbyists that come in and kind of water down any sort of legislation or what it is that you can do about it. And so it persists. And so the new solution is about, no, we can't operate that way past a certain point. I mean, it still has its place, of course. But at some point, you just have to put the power in the right people's hands. And they take responsibility for their own thing. Now, who gets displaced in that process, and what does that transition from one system to the next look like? I think it's kind of a fascinating topic.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. Especially like, I just really want to be able to see like people be able to own their own data within the space because within Web 2, it was pretty much all about profiting on our data, sending us ads that doesn't necessarily even resonate with us, and then just profiting us on us in general. So just being able to have that sovereignty of being able to own your data, I think that's huge within Web 3. Something that was probably on top of mind during Web 1 and, during Web 1.0 and when certain technologies were being built and when the cypherpunk movement was getting started. I'm pretty sure that that was something that was very important and near and dear to them. But unfortunately, as the internet evolved and like certain just like large companies and monopolies just pretty much took over this space and just pretty much just dominated and generated a lot of revenue off of our data. So being able to take that back within Web3 would be very powerful, in my opinion. And we'd love to see like how this technology could make sure that that happens. And we'd love to see more trustless systems as well. So you don't have to send sensitive data that could impact your life, like and to just like a centralized entity, being able to share that with a trustless contract. I would feel much more at ease that way. But I do want to shift the conversation now into how to get the community to mobilize and support a political campaign. Being that we have Joshua Leavitt on the call today, someone that's running for Nevada State Senate, would like to see like how could we get the community involved to support a legislator that supports Web3. So my next question is really geared towards all of you guys, but would specifically like to hear Frisson's response about like how to get started with Tally here. But my question is, how feasible is building a DAO around a political campaign, and what implications could this have for campaign management and voter engagement? So Frisson, like once a DAO is created for a political campaign, how can they get started with Tally? And can DAOs vote? So you mentioned something about utilizing NFTs, but want to know like how can a DAO use NFTs as opposed to ERC20s and Tally?
Yeah, I think using NFTs instead of ERC20s on Tally is simple. It's like trivial. We're natively compatible with NFTs, as well as fungible tokens. And really, you just have to. I'm going to get like extremely briefly technical. You just have to deploy a module on the token, which enables, which basically sends events to sort of track voting power of the token. There's a standard maintained by OpenZeppelin that you can easily just deploy to use. So yeah, that's like the how. I think the question of like, can a DAO be used for a political campaign, or like how should a DAO be used for a political campaign, it's not really a technical question. Like I think it's very doable. It's more of like a strategy and a political and a fundraising question, which I think some of the other speakers are more qualified to speak on than me. But on a high level, I think with any DAO, I think really any initiative I think could benefit from the DAO structure. I think probably having some sort of like formation moment where there's a group of people who sort of have a mission in mind, a goal for the DAO in mind, and do some kind of token launch. It doesn't have to be a transferable token launch, right? It doesn't have to be like a fundraiser per se. It can just be a distribution of non-transferable tokens to sort of seed governance power in the DAO, and then give the DAO something to govern, right? So that's the key part, right? It's like if you want to do a DAO, it's like what is it that you really want? Distributed, permission, like a distributed group that anyone can join. That sort of values aligned with you. What is it that you want them to make decisions about? That's a really key question, right? Are there, aspects of the campaign that you would sort of want people to be able to vote on, or is it more coming up with new ideas or a platform that you want people to be able to like come up with their own ideas for the platform or influence the platform? That could be a really good use case for DAO governance as well. So it's really just a question of like kind of understanding the why. I think it's really important to have that answer, right? Because I think a lot of people launched DAOs in like 2021 where they wanted the DAO, but they didn't know why they wanted the DAO. You know what I'm saying? So that's like, I would sort of advise against that. But as long as there's a clear understanding of sort of, why it's valuable to have, anyone be able to join and contribute to some aspect of the campaign, then I think it's a really powerful way of pulling in and engaging people.
Oh, for sure. Well said there too. And wanted to move on into like actually talking about the specifics of NFTs being used within the DAO. So this is geared towards Sean and Joshua as well. So how do you think that the act of contributing to a campaign can become a community-owned achievement? Um, what about ways that NFTs could be used to serve as, let's say, achievement badges for actions like hosting awareness events? How do you think the accumulation of these badges can unlock, let's say, significant roles within the campaign's community, such as using like a combination of these badges to unlock a role, such as becoming a Discord moderator for the campaign's DAO? And also, Frisson, can roles be token gated in Tally? Like, for an example, like a certain NFT holder within a DAO can post a proposal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you sort of could accommodate that. But yeah, there's sort of a concept of rules within the standard that Tally adheres to, a concept of roles. And yeah, you can create like an allow list of certain addresses that are able to create a proposal and not others, as an example.
Okay, cool. And okay, so that's good to know that this infrastructure already exists on Tally. And then Joshua and Sean, how do you envision things like achievement badges being utilized within your campaign? What is something that you would even want to like? What are some actions you would like to reward within your campaign?
I'll jump in. So I think the idea sounds fun, right? Even if you go to my website, I have a bunch of these digital little pins that that I use to, hey, you can put these on. You can put these on your social media if you support me, and so on. And they say like vote for Josh, and Josh is the guy, and all this fun stuff. But I think we were talking recently. Wouldn't it be fun if I walk the neighborhoods and that's what I contribute to, and I put a sign up and whatever, and I get one of these little badges, and then I can and then I can get what's like 5. I can get a bigger badge, or you know what I'm saying, or some way to continue showing, hey, I'm getting involved and I really support them, and here's how much activity I have, and each badge gets rarer and rarer and rarer as you go up. Or sometimes I think gamifying or having a little fun in that sense would I think get a lot of people engaged, and again, it's all about awareness, and that's what I'm focusing on. I can tell you this though, accountability is something that everybody's talking about, and I agree. Accountability, and that's why I like the idea of DAOs and the ability to vote and pretty much say, hey, here's where I want my money to go to if I'm supporting a candidate or candidates. Is the idea saying, all right, well, is this person keeping their promises? And these are things that are important to me, and and so on and so forth. People have come up to me and say, hey, we want an accountability sort of model. Do you do a contract? Yada yada yada. And I'll tell you, a lot of people in the campaign candidates are going, yeah, but what's in it for me, man? I want accountability, but you want accountability just to be accountable, or really, what's in it for me? And I tell you, a lot of it is about the donations, about either building up the brand or something to that effect. And the idea then that there's let's say a PAC that has a lot more member engagement that can say, hey, I want my money to go here, 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 there, instead of whoever's running the PAC saying, I would just give the money to what have you, sounds really appealing, and I think a perfect place for a DAO. And we talked about it in my campaign. And I thought it's just a little too complicated at that level, but another organization running it that's looking to support a candidate or multiple candidates, I think it'd be perfect for it. And again, I want to see accountability. I want to know that my legislators are doing what they're promising that they said they were going to do.
Right.
And ultimately, they're going to want, why do they want to participate? Well, probably because, again, it's either ways to raise funds or ways to get elected, right? And a DAO might be a perfect solution for that. Plus, again, get more people engaged in that political process. Let them start watching their legislators and making sure that stuff is actually getting done. They're representing them. I like all those ideas.
When you brought up accountability, what came to mind to me was a Moloch DAO. Are you familiar with a Moloch DAO and how members could rage quit if, basically you could get people to crowdfund a DAO, but they have the ability to rage quit. They could actually withdraw their funds within a certain amount of time if the DAO is going in a direction that they don't agree with. Like if the DAO just completely changes course, then they have that ability to just opt out. That's what came to mind immediately, like when you started talking about accountability. But then something that was on top of my mind was authority as well. I think people, like, as they contribute to the campaign and earn achievement badges, it would be really cool to allow them to level up within your campaign. Like, what if somebody starts off, just as a supporter within your campaign, but they have proven time and time again that they are of great value to your campaign. And then maybe one day in the future it could become a campaign manager because they have proven to be that effective, within your campaign run. I think that would be an interesting way to get people really involved in politics because, to be honest, like, I didn't focus or really read about politics or even like care about it until I got involved in Web3 and then saw like how much pushback was coming from the government and coming from certain legislators. Although there are some certain legislators that does support crypto and Web3, but that's basically like how I'm voting is pretty much like crypto or bust, in the futures. So I just think it would be cool to like really take community engagement, empowerment, ownership, all of that stuff into politics and get people really interested in like the laws that are governing the land in which they live in. So I just think it's just it could be a very powerful combination to get people actually more involved in what's going on within, like, either at the local level or at the federal level as well.
I'd love to pull the thread on that Moloch DAO issue that you're talking about, because that's something we directly dealt with at Lobby 3. We created the software Devox, Decentralized Voices, and we used Moloch DAO, and there was the bit of political strategy that goes in there, like, should you allow that rage quitting and any of the funds to go along with them, or do you want to try to lock that in, right? Because part of the whole pitch was that you were going to raise a bunch of money for whatever topic you were interested in. Maybe it's educating lawmakers at the federal level. Maybe it's in a state, just having conversations about accepting crypto and what it could be. Maybe that's a topic. And you would collect like $100,000 or some amount of money. And then any politician that came along and supported that idea sufficiently to the DAO would then get that money. So that exact issue about Moloch DAO and the rage quitting and how you manage that was one of the design discussions that we worked with Raid Guild on. And, those contracts are ready to go. They just need to be audited, which of course takes money and time. These things, the reality of launching this stuff becomes really hard. It turns out in order to do what we were talking about with DVox, you had to have a PAC operating separately, and then it depended on how much that PAC could theoretically give, because otherwise the ZKID solution wouldn't work out. You could also have that voting be not just for that cycle of what the person promises to do, but then you get into that accountability side, which is what everybody asked about, right? Like, okay, we got this money together. They say that they're going to do this education. How do we then follow up, right? So no more of this campaign promises, and there's no real record on whether or not they did. There's just an actual record. And the idea was to then continue on from there and say, like, here's money to help get the word out about, whether or not you made this vote, right? And the interesting thing about not having it be associated with a campaign is that whether the person followed through or not, there was going to be some money to talk about it. And it wasn't controlled by them. But it gets interesting quick, because the law, we can go down what some of the laws are and what you are and are not allowed to do, and how like KYC runs into ZKID, right? Because what's the point of ZKID if you can just KYC everything? But then, even if you do a more robust KYC, is that going to be accepted? A lot of people think that they just want that information in order to have voter rolls, and it's not really about checking things, because the KYC as it exists now, Kim Jong-un could come along and use a VPN and say that he's so-and-so Main Street and give that money, and there's no way to really track it, not easily anyway. You can keep going with the short-term side of it, of what you can do, right? So Josh is talking about rewarding people and having these things build on top of each other, right? And there's, whether there's what I was just talking about, whether there's that quadratic funding side of things, whether there was like another proposal where you had tokenization of the neighborhood that was going to be affected by a new casino. And all of the people in that neighborhood would affect the people who approve permits in order to do whatever you needed to get the casino ready. And, as politics happens, if you're not in the right circles, we've seen the Stanford study that shows that regardless of how popular something is, there's a 30% chance of it getting passed, right? So Congress doesn't listen to the people, and it's statistically been shown to be true. Well, what if those people wanted a particular thing to be passed, and they're all voters in your area, and you had proof that it was voters in your area, right? That's all done NFTs and soul-bound tokens. But there's so many laws between here and there, and you start off just with, should Josh have the ability to just mint NFTs whenever he needs to, and then the value of them is what his campaign is willing to give you if you've collected these, or if you had some from a past thing that combined into these, and now you can go to the gala, go to the fancy thing, have a say, get a job, be a DAO moderator, whatever the grouping of NFTs provides you. And that's cool. But then you get into, should they be transferable, right? Because if they're transferable, they can be sold. And if you can sell them, then donors can come and give money to your volunteers. And then, well, are they volunteers anymore? And this gets back to the whole, nobody wants my shoes, but everybody wants Jordans. These things are all brand new. If you look at matching funds in the state, we were thinking about doing quadratic funding for it, but the state can't administer this stuff. It gets too complicated. But now with crypto, you can, have, depending on the number of candidates and how many people got involved, you can change the money around. Anyway, I'm going down a whole bunch of different paths. There's so many different directions to go in. In the short term, there's the reality of some of these laws, and education is just right at the forefront of what needs to be done. But these dreams that we've come up with, they're what kind of lead us down these rabbit holes to see, like, well, can we do it right now if we wanted to? What's stopping us? And that helps give priorities of what to do next. And it's, like I said before, it's a fun ride.
Oh yeah, and just gets the community actually involved with what's going on, like even at the local level. Like it would be interesting to see if people could. I don't know how this will be implemented, but like imagine if you could control like where your tax dollars go towards. Like if you could have a say in what you actually want to fund. Like to me, it would make sense like to fund certain things um, like certain things like top of mind, like so like funding the government, firefighters, police officers, um, potholes if you need to like like clean up the streets and whatnot. It would be nice to just have a say so on where like my tax dollars go towards instead of just God knows where like it actually like what it's actually funding. Um, so yeah, just yeah, the ideas and dreams here pretty much endless. We could definitely have another conversation around these topics. And then since you brought up Michael Jordan's shoes again, I have another question. Aligned around merchandise, for an example. So I want to see like, well, first off, Joshua, do you have any experience within the metaverse? And like and actually like purchasing wearables, like are you familiar with these things?
I'm familiar. I haven't purchased anything yet, but I am familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking a candidate could provide campaign merch as metaverse wearables, which could be sold on the secondary market. like like I mentioned earlier, like I think if Trump was were to do this, it would be very successful. Like if he were to sell certain merch within Decentraland or other metaverses. What do you think of that? Like if we were to create Joshua Leavitt t-shirts and like characters when the Decentraland can wear it, it could like be like a conversation piece within members of the game because you could chat and communicate with other members all across the world within a game, like a metaverse like Decentraland.
What do I mean? It sounds great. I love that. I love the idea. Um, obviously the thing I always get concerned about is those darn campaign finance laws, right?
Yeah.
What's available or what's able to do and so on. And I'm a straight arrow. I try to follow the rules as best as I can. But
Mhm.
the concept of that sounds fascinating. Um, I can ramble on with a bunch of ideas that I'd love to see, but who am I, right? I that's why I say in a lot of ways the government shouldn't be so much of like, hey, we want to rule this or we want to restrict this or that out of fear. We just why not let the entrepreneurs and the innovators think and come up with these ideas, right? And we can put together a place that allows that to shine. If that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
I,
think the
I,
more
I
popular
think
you.
there's a,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
I just wanted to pick up on that thought that about why not just let the entrepreneurs and stuff do that. I think there's a big fear about what the emergent behavior of all of this independent and composable action is going to be like. They don't. They know how to work with the current system in order to maintain stability, right? Now, if you suddenly give people the ability to act, with a lot more freedom, and that sounds nice to have freedom, but when we might affect other people and we might affect them detrimentally and we might really affect people's lives. And if these things aren't predictable, I think people have a hard time endorsing them because they don't know what they're endorsing.
Yeah, and again, that's why I think that more and more people should get involved and give their opinion, right? So people aren't just guessing. That they go, okay, now we can predict. For instance, they say Las Vegas most automatable city in the country. Should we, I look at it and go, should we prevent automation or should we prepare for, that event to occur? Maybe upskilling and ways to circumvent the anticipated downfall of something like that. But at the same point, Nevada has to be competitive on a global market now that everybody else is doing resorts and gaming and so on. So I ultimately people, the decision makers only know what they know, and so that's why it's so important for people to get involved and share their story.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then back to the wearables thing, I think obviously they'll become more valuable the more that you increase your popularity within the space. And I definitely think that the Web3 space, would take to you and support you, especially with you embracing Web3. I think it'll be interesting. I definitely know how to pretty much like get you started with creating wearables if that's something that you would like to explore. Like we could get started with something simple like vote for Joshua Leavitt t-shirts or caps or things or something like that, and then get that implemented within Decentraland, and perhaps even do a campaign like a actual event, a campaign event in Decentraland. You can actually host spaces in the game itself as well. I think that
Yeah.
would be pretty fun.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. That sounds really neat. Yeah, I'd love to explore that.
All right, cool. Yeah, so we got Sinful Meat Stick here from Decentraland. Perhaps we could set something up. He also has a podcast that's hosted inside of Decentraland. If he's open to it, we'd love to get you on there as well. His series is called Beyond NFTs. So yeah, we could work on setting something up there.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
No problem. And then my last question here for today, Josh, is how can the Web3 community get involved in your campaign? Like right now, like what is set in place for the people to get involved, and how would you like for people to get started? And how do you intend to use Web3 with your current campaign as it is right now?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, uh, obviously donating is, the big, the big help, right? Especially when it comes to, the cryptocurrency side of it, because again, the more people that see that, hey, more candidates and more legislators out there that say, hey, he's getting donations with crypto, the more they're going to want to participate. Let me just tell you a quick story. Is someone called me up or actually sent me a text and said, ha, kind of in a goofy voice or text, whatever you want to call it. I said, somebody else is now accepting crypto in Nevada. And I said, good. That was the intent of the entire process, was to get more and more. It wasn't for me to hog the space, but it was to get more and more people to say, yeah, I want to participate in that. So obviously that helps, and it helps. My campaign helps me get elected. But the other thing is to get more involved. And you're taking my campaign directly. I just say get more involved in your own legislation and with your own legislators, and start speaking to them, because hopefully that Nevada is not an anomaly here, but legislators here are very approachable. We have a part-time legislation, meets every 2 years. So they're just normal folks in the neighborhood. So they're very easy to approach and talk to. So I say that's one of the other important things is to reach out to your legislators and your representatives and tell them your story and what you think. Now, spreading the word is the other one. And Jaris, you're talking about it. I know Sean helps out a tremendous amount, but even outside of Nevada, getting people riled up, they can about getting involved, have them check out the site, let them know that that there's a way to really promote Web3, crypto, blockchain, and people getting involved by saying, hey, Nevada's doing it, we should as well. And here's Josh's story. So hey, yeah, help build awareness, donate if you can, help build the brand, and share ideas. That's my other big job right now, is just listen and understand what's going on.
Yeah, let's work on getting people more aware of your campaign. Yeah, you definitely got my support going forward as well. And when it comes to donating to your campaign, how can people do that? Is there a website available now where people can donate in crypto?
I should get better at always saying that darn website. But yeah, 100%. So it's Josh for Nevada. It's all spelled out, joshfornevada.com. And you'll see me. You'll see everything about me, what I'm focusing on, and right there you'll see that you're able to donate using cryptocurrency, and you'll actually go through the commerce site at blockchain for that. But check out the site, joshfornevada.com. My contact information is right on there. So if you need to get a hold of me, reach out. I'm also pretty active on Instagram and Facebook, and starting to get more onto Twitter or X, however you call it at this point. So hit me on any of those forums.
I appreciate you. Any last words for you, Sean?
I think I rambled enough today. And thank you for the time. And it was a fun conversation.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I appreciate you guys. Everyone here in the audience, I appreciate you as well. See a lot of familiar faces and friends here. And if you would like to support a legislator that embraces Web3, check out joshfornevada.com. and consider leaving a donation.
All right.
I
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
you all. No problem. You're welcome, man. All right, appreciate you all. Thank you for coming out for episode 2 of Beyond PFPs. Until next time, have a great day, everyone.